Hi everybody, today I'm going to be going through 10 licks using the G major scale and all in the style of John Mayer. The licks are all in the style of the song Gravity, which has a really basic chord progression. The main chord progression in it is just G and C. So one bar of G and one bar of a C chord. So what you're going to get out of this lesson is first some basic licks using the major scale, but also learn a little bit how to apply a scale like that over a really basic chord progression. Because all the licks, the first bar of them, are made up of notes that go well over the G chord, and the second bar always lands on notes that go well over a C chord. So you're not just learning, basic G major licks. We're learning G major licks, but we're also learning how to apply it over a basic chord progression. So hopefully you can take some of these ideas and then apply them to your own chord progressions. So let's get into the licks. Here is the first lick. So there's the first lick. Let's break it down. Like I said, every single lick here starts on the G chord and then ends on the C chord. So the first bar is what you should play over the G chord. It's what sounds good over the G chord. And then the last few notes, that when you get to the second bar, that fits right into the C chord. Pretty basic little blues style lick here with some interesting bending ideas. So basically that first bend, I'm kind of bending up almost all the way first and bending down. So you can do that or do something like that. There's no wrong way to do it, but those type of bends sound cool, either when you start bent up and bend down or do like a double bend. And maybe when you bend up, don't even come all the way down. Just do like a half way down and then back up. There's a few licks like that in this lesson that have some cool bending ideas. And then there's another bend in that first bar that has that double bend. And then we get up to the 10th fret on the first string, and then end there. So here's a good example of ending on the C chord. So when you get to the second bar and you land on this, the last few notes of the lick, you're landing on this note right here. And that note is the G, which is the fifth of C. So that goes really well with C. It's in the C chord. If you were picturing the C chord here, that note is in the C chord. So any note that's in the C chord is going to go well with the C chord. So that's really what to look out for when you're looking on these licks. When you get to that second bar, look at the note you're landing on, and where is that note in relation to the C chord? You want to be landing on notes in that chord. And that's kind of the key to playing over changes well and making them sound good. When you go into the new chord, land on something that goes well with that chord. It's that simple. So let's play the lick one more time at a slow speed. So there's the next lick. This one we're doing some double stops here. If you saw my double stops lesson, there were some licks in here similar to this that use the same idea. We're basically just climbing up, starting on the G. That little double stop that comes from the G shape. And then just climbing up. 5-5 on the first and third string, 7-7 on the first and third string. When you're playing this style of lick, where there's a muted string in beneath, in between the two strings you're playing, I always play that with my pick hand in the pick hitting the third string, in the top string, the high string, plucking with my finger. Makes it a little bit easier to play rather than picking every note. And also, a little flourish I threw in that first note, that would be really hard to do if I was using, harder anyway, if I was picking every note. Basically what I'm doing there, before I hit this third fret on the first string, I'm doing a little hammer on for it to, from 3 to 4 on the third string. So it's like this really slowly. And then, when I go to the 7 here, another flourish there as I do a little half step slide up. It's a cool little effect. And then the last part of the lick, I climb down. You can also do that kind of trick there where you don't play the notes together. You play the 7 first on the third, then on the second, and even do a little half slide up if you want to. Now here's the important part here. So we played, remember the first chord's G, and the second bar is C. Look at the notes we land on in the second bar. Those are perfectly going with the C chord. You have the root, C, and then you have the 9, which is the third of C, are coming right out of the chord. So obviously that's going to go with the C chord really well, and we're still on the G major scale. So let's play this lick one more time at a slow speed. Okay, so there's the next lick. Let's break it down. A lot of double stops in this one. The couple tips for double stops, if you haven't seen my other video where I went over 20 double stop licks, this one, first off, a double stop just means you're playing 2 notes at the same time, if you don't know what that is. Really simple. When you're playing any of these, so let's take this first one where I'm starting with my finger on the third on the first and second string and hammering up to the 5. The trick is making sure the top string is ringing out while you're doing that hammer on. That's what gets these to sound really good. Another thing about the way John Mayer plays specifically, he hits the strings pretty hard. He does a lot of this, really heavy wrist stuff. So maybe you want to experiment when you play these double stops. Try a little bit different of a wrist technique. So just rather than keeping it really simple, maybe try and do it a little more aggressively. That's a little bit trickier, but it can add some dynamics to your playing and helps you develop skill controlling notes not sounding out that you don't want to sound out. Because when you hit this big strum, that's what you got to watch out for, is notes popping out you didn't intend to hear. So it's not a bad thing to practice this. When you practice this type of lick, practice them in different ways. Gives you just an extra tool in your toolbox. So in any case, that's the first part of the lick. And then let's get to the next part of the lick where we land on the C. So the last part of the lick is this. A couple more double stops here. And the important part here, we do this little thing on the 10th and 12th fret up here. And then look what we land. We land right where the C chord is. Obviously the 8 and 8 on the first and second string are part of the C chord, and then we land on the 9th fret, which is the E, which happens to be in the C chord. It's the major third of the C. So that's obviously going to go perfectly with the C chord. So that's the takeaway from this. Let's play this one more time at a slow speed. So there's the next lick. Let's break it down. This one I played something really similar to this in the introduction. That lick goes perfectly over the G here. We got the B, which goes into the G chord. That's the third of G. And then we got the D, which is the fifth of G. So goes perfectly with the G. Then we get over to the C, and as I'm approaching the C, right before I get to the C, the note I'm not playing on the C, I'm still playing on the G, but I still am anticipating landing on the C. So the note I hit right before I get to the C is the C note. So a lot of players do that sometimes. It's a good technique. When you're playing over chords, you don't have to play exactly the notes over each chord as you're playing it. You can kind of play the notes anticipating the next chord. So, you know, this last couple notes of when I'm playing over the G, I'm playing the strong C note. It's still in the G major scale, but it kind of anticipates the C chord that's about to come. So that's a good thing to keep an eye out for. When you're improvising over a major, over a blues, and you're combining major and minor scales, you know, the rule is you play the major over the 1 chord, the minor over the 4 chord. But what you hear a lot of players do that, you know, are a little more advanced, they'll start to anticipate the minor chord coming while the major chord is happening. So you'll start to hear some minor notes even though the major chord is still what's playing in the background. So that's kind of the takeaway from this. Hopefully you got some of that. So in the last few notes are pretty basic. And of course, we're playing over the C now, so we're landing on some very strong C notes, like the E, which is the third of C. So that's the takeaway here. So let's play this lick one more time at a really slow speed. So there's the next lick. The first part of this lick is something I think I've seen John Mayer do before. I've definitely seen Guthrie Govan do it before, and I'm sure other players do it as well. But basically the trick is you bend up, and as you're bend up, you begin to slide up and slide back on that string and then pull off. So an interesting little technique. It takes a little getting used to, but definitely try to experiment with that. Basically, you bend up, and as you're bending up, sliding, in this case, from the 10 to the 11, sliding back and then pulling off. If you need to hit the string twice, try that too. Try different ways to do it, but you know, you don't have to nail this lick exactly. It's the idea that you want to take away from this. There's some cool possibilities. This type of thing seems to work really well when you're playing over the major scale. So that's definitely a takeaway here. The last few notes are really simple. We ride the G, high G on the 15th fret as we're playing over the G chord. And then we land on this note. We're landing on the major 6th of C, so it's not a strong chord tone, but nevertheless it still goes really well with C. And we're hitting the C note right before that, so it still goes really well with the C. So let's play this lick one more time at a really slow speed. Okay, so there's the next lick. This is a really Jimi Hendrix style lick. Stevie Ray Vaughan also took this from Jimi Hendrix as well. Whenever you see Jimi Hendrix do that style of playing where he picks one note and only plays with his fingering hand, that's the basic style here. So you can play this in a couple ways. You can pick the first note of every 3-note pattern, so then pick again, then pick again. Or you can just pick once. That's a good style to get down, and develops a little bit of the fretting hand technique to be able to make all those notes sound at the same volume, even though you're only picking once. And you are able to do that only if when you pull off, you kind of pull down across the string. If you just lift up the finger, you don't get the volume in the second note, so that kind of forces you to have to pick. But if you do the pull-offs right, you don't have to pick. So that's the takeaway from this lesson. Here's the lick at a slow speed. So there is the next lick. Let's break this one down. A lot of things in this lick you have seen before. Some of the things are new. So the first part, nice little bending lick there. You can either pick when you do that second bend up, or not pick and just hammer it on and bend up without picking. So without picking at all. So a couple options there. When I do that bend right there, I'm really only doing like a half step bend up. You can also try and start bent up and then bend down. Experiment with different things, some different styles you can do with the bend there. So in any case, that second part. Another thing I like to do too, again, the John Mayer style, he has a really heavy picking hand. So you can try that type of thing. Or maybe you're hitting a couple strings muted. So like when I hit that, I'm only playing the 8th fret on the 2nd string, but as I'm coming down, I have the 3rd string muted by touching the tip of my fretting finger against it. Get kind of a percussive sound. And then the last part is a double stop we haven't seen before, that we are playing over the C. So we land on the C note and then do this little double stop. That's just 9, 7 on the 3rd string and then slide down 2 frets. You can do that. So a couple different options there. Let's play this one at a slow speed. So there's the next lick. Let's break it down. So this one, I'm doing a little climbing idea, which John Mayer does that in a few places in different versions of the gravity solo that I've heard, either starting down lower on the neck and going up on a single string, or like I'm doing it in a single position. And when I'm doing that, again, I'm doing that kind of percussive style. Kind of a cool thing. Adds that kind of percussive feel to hitting those notes. So that's how I'm playing those first 4 notes. Then I'm bending up on the 17. Then do a little half step bend on the 19th fret. And then a little roll from 17 to 17 on the 1st and 2nd string. And then another cool little bending trick. Up on the 17th fret, bend up and bend back down and bend back up. Again, you don't have to bend all the way down. You can just come halfway down. Both cool sounding little licks. So let's break this down again at a slow speed. So there's the lick. Let's break it down. Some cool ideas in this lick. First, we're starting off with double stops. And when I'm playing those, try and work again that percussive style. So instead of just playing it the normal way, that works just fine. So if that's what you want to do, then do it. But again, also give this percussive thing a shot. Because again, it gives you a different sound. It gives you a more aggressive sound, so you can kind of mix it up with some dynamics in your playing. And then it also kind of helps develop your right and left hand technique. You have to be a little more precise with what you're doing with your left hand and your right hand to be able to pull that off. So next part of the lick is pretty basic. We're landing on the C there, the major 6th of C. Not a strong chord tone, but nevertheless something that goes well with C. And then the next part's the really interesting part. We're doing a bend up, and then when we're already bent up, bending up another half step. Really tricky. It's tricky to get it so you land on the full step on that first note, and then when you bend up again, that extra half step, make sure you land exactly on that half step. Really tricky. What you probably want to do there when you develop this is just do a little exercise where you bend up and back between the full step and then I probably got some work there to do myself, but you get the idea. You bend up, 0 to 1, 0 to the full step, and then 1 to the 1.5 step. These licks can really sound great if you absolutely nail that note perfectly. But in any case, you do that, and after you bend down on that, you bend all the way back up to the full step, and then finally end there. So the big part of that lick, I think, is the percussive double stop, and then that double bend. So that's the takeaway. Let's play it one more time at a slow speed. Okay, so there's the last lick. Let's break it down. We're starting off with a really basic double stop. Just a little pull off from the 5 to the 3 on the 2nd string there, while letting the 3rd string and the 1st string ring out. Again, I encourage you to try the big strum there. And after that, we get into this really simple single note thing. That whole thing is like this. And then for the last part, we get into this single note climb thing. So that's 9-10 on the fourth, 7-9 on the third, and 8-10 on the second. So, and then finally, we land on the E and then D. And that is actually, when we land on this D here, that's coming back around to the G chord. The D goes well with G because it is the fifth of G. It's a chord tone of G. It's in the G chord. So this lick kind of takes us all the way back around. We go from the G, when we do this part, we're playing over the C, and then the last note, we land on the G. So that's going from the G to the C back to the G.